We're back with you live tonight, You're in Focus, and thanks for staying on. Lead poisoning is considered widespread across major South African cities. This is a condition linked to violent behavior, declining IQs, and head disorders. Reports suggest that it is also common in certain mining and fishing towns too. Scientists have warned that it seems South Africa has no plan to remove the poisonous substance from the areas. In fact, doctors have only reported 3 cases between 2017 and 2022. Joining us now to share his thoughts is Thokozani Mbonane, Head of Environmental Health Department at the University of Johannesburg. Thokozani, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight here on In Focus. How does this product, or shall I say, substance present itself? In what form and in which instances and in which areas?
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me to have a discussion on lead poisoning. Lead poisoning, it's a condition that comes from exposure to lead. Lead, we found it in an environment, in our living spaces where children play. So this is a common product that is a metal that is used in most of our products that we use on our daily basis. For example, it's found in batteries. Scaringly, in children, it's found in toys, in parks where they are playing, due to the paint that is used. Normally, lead is used to make substances brighter, for example, bright yellow, and it lasts longer in products, such as steel, plastic. So that's how it's found in our environment.
And why is our level of awareness around lead poisoning so poor?
I think as lead is not a non-communicable condition, and as a country we have not adopted preventive strategies into non-communicable disease. Less effort has been put into that. However, research that has been done over the years has tried to sort of highlight the challenges around exposure to lead in our communities, especially previously disadvantaged communities. And within communities, we normally aware of these conditions that are common. So you could say that there hasn't been that much of health education, health awareness around lead poisoning as a condition in South Africa.
So would you say we are failing in policing some of the limits that have been placed on the use of heavy metal in some of the day-to-day products that we use, like paint, like batteries, as you've mentioned?
We might be failing, and also there are other strides that have been made. For example, the government earlier on in the 2000s, they removed lead in petrol. They also regulated lead in paint. The amount that is found in lead was decreased so that we can protect our normal household. So the paint that you use in your household. But more could have been done to make communities aware, and more could have been done to ensure that we do monitoring of our environment, like your soil, your air, especially in places where we find our children playing mostly.
Now, statistics here are quite alarming, saying in 2012, studies showed that 74% of school children ages between 6 to 14 tested in the 2 Western Cape fishing communities of Struisbaai and Ellensbaai had lead poisoning. I mean, that kind of statistic, what is the impact of, what is the effect of that on the children themselves?
Children are at risk because they are still developing, and lead, once it enters the body, it cannot be digested, and it doesn't have any value or nutritional value to our system. So it needs to find a place where it can stay, and our body cannot eliminate it, for example, the food that has been digested. So it will end up in our blood system, in soft tissues, as well as in bones. Therefore, children are still developing, because it can substitute calcium, causing some serious long-term health effects. For example, once it gets to the brain, it interferes the neurons that send signals. For example, if you're thinking of something, then you need to act. Then it can interfere with that system. Therefore, our children are at risk because they don't get to develop fully due to being affected by this lead that they don't have any use in their body.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that continued exposure, especially those who grow up exposed to lead at a young age, would end up scoring lower in terms of the intelligence test. Why?
It is because it interferes with the most important body systems where it ends up in your brain. And with that, it sort of doesn't allow the child to fully develop and be able to participate with a normal child. And this has been proven in rich countries like the United States of America. They have shown that children that have been exposed over a long period of time, even if it's a low level, they eventually will develop some challenges as they grow older. Even some, they do not perform to their full ability or compared to their counterpart. So it does play a role in terms of academic performance and your normal cognitive abilities.
Now, there are, of course, talks around what South Africa can do or what is planning to do in terms of fighting this particular disease. And there was a talk of setting up a national lead exposure prevention team between 2022 and 2027. Do you know, do you have any idea what that team would be responsible for and what they would be doing?
The teams will be a multi team from different professionals. I come with a background of environmental health, your former health inspectors back in the day. So mostly what will be the responsibility of environmental health practitioner is to make sure that the environment that we live in, play and work in, it is lead-free. They will have to do regular monitoring, do surveillance of contamination in the environment. And while also you will have your medical doctors that will be responsible for assisting those that present in our facilities to diagnose the condition and make sure that they receive appropriate treatment, because it's better if it's identified quite early before more damage has been caused.
And as far as the space that you're working in, I mean, is there research and investigations or work being done towards a lead-free South Africa? And is that something that's even possible?
Yes, there is a lot of research that has been done, especially by the South African Medical Research Council. And also as an institute, as UJ, we have done a few studies. One we've done in Ekurhuleni around children. That was in last year. We still find that there is lead in certain toys and in certain equipment that children use. And also in the soil that they play in, we still find that there is alarming levels. And we also have done other studies where we have found that certain practices that as a country we end up doing, for example, the use of the homemade aluminum pots, the illegal mining activities closer to communities, because they use mostly chemicals to sort of retrieve gold. It ends up contaminating the environment around. With more investment into preventive and also making sure that the environment is safer, yes, definitely we could make sure that we have a lead-free environment in our spaces. This has been proven in other countries in Africa, where they were able to remove or treat the contaminated soil around communities that had illegal mining activities. So as a country, if we were to invest in preventive strategies, definitely we can see an improvement.
Yeah. So one of the things, Thokozani, that's being reported is, for example, schools, right? Public schools in particular. Some of them, they use lead-based paint. And in developed countries like the United States, where this has been the situation, the solution was fairly straightforward. They just remove the paint and they cover it up. Is there an appetite in South Africa to embark on such an exercise?
Research and researchers have recommended such an exercise, that we sort of remove and monitor the use of leaded paint in our schools. But the challenge becomes with those schools that rely on donations. And also, we have seen some illegal producers of lead because they will take the quicker route and the cheaper route to produce paint. And then we will need a stronger team from environmental health to ensure that that paint doesn't get to our schools. And also, we do have schools that are quite old, and the infrastructure is quite old, where not much has been done, even when resources have been put to remove your steel pipes that are old, the roofing that had used leaded paint, but it hasn't been enforced as much as we need to. If there could be a buy-in both from the profession and also political space, then we should be able to address this concern.
Yeah. From an environmental health specialist, I mean, do you think lead today in 2022 in South Africa is posing a major, huge risk to our health?
It is, because most of these cases are not reported like your normal cases, like your COVID and other cases. Most people will never present in a facility and be screened for lead exposure. And some of the symptoms are quite common with other illnesses. For example, someone can suffer from abdominal pain, which can be from a foodborne related illness. Others can be suffering from constipation, iron deficiency. And it's not a condition that is will be checked before they assess other conditions. So it does pose a threat to South Africa. The real threat is that we have no idea the extent of such in our communities. Research has been done, but it has been done in few areas. We haven't seen where we are able to indicate that in this town or in this area, so much children do not have lead or are not suffering from lead poisoning. So it does pose a danger. If you look at the other social ills that we are experiencing in our township, they could be related, especially those townships that we know they are closer to sources of lead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking that because, I mean, there's been a very clear awareness and a clear move to remove asbestos, for example, in our country from the roofs and so on and so forth. But I'm not hearing of such a campaign broadly being publicized around the removal of lead.
Yeah, it hasn't taken off similar to asbestos. But slowly we are seeing that government, especially National Department of Health, they have approved certain regulation that make sure that this condition is taken seriously. For example, under the regulation for notifiable disease, they've indicated that if it is picked up in our labs or in our facilities by medical doctors, they should report this condition. So there is a surveillance system in terms of that. Then we need to push in terms of prevention. More resources should be pushed to prevention. So there should be more environmental health practitioners going out there doing surveillance of facilities like schools where children are, because they are the most vulnerable population in our country. There have been some sort of awareness created, especially around September when we have when we celebrate our environmental health day. So there have been awareness, but it can be improved.
Thokozani, I appreciate your intervention tonight. Thank you very much for coming on. Thokozani Mbonane, Head of Environmental Health Department at the University of Johannesburg.